In the annals of history, there are many wars that have shaped the world as we know it, but none so brief as the Zanzibar War. Fought on the morning of August 27, 1896. This battle holds the title of the shortest war in history, lasting a mere 38 minutes. In those 38 minutes, the fate of a small island in the Indian Ocean was sealed, and the British Empire strengthened its grip on East Africa. But how could a war of such significance be over in such a short time? What led to this unprecedented conflict, and why did it unfold the way it did? Today, we dive into the fascinating and dramatic story of the Zanzibar War, a conflict that still raises questions about power, politics, and imperialism. Zanzibar is a small island located in the Indian Ocean, just 40 kilometers off the coast of East Africa. Though it might seem like a tranquil paradise today, Zanzibar's strategic location made it a prime target for empires seeking control over the region's resources. Throughout history, the island has been a major trading hub, its ports bustling with merchants from Arabia, India, and beyond. Zanzibar's importance as a trading center grew exponentially, particularly during the 19th century when it became the focal point for the East African slave trade. This unique combination of geography and commerce made Zanzibar a highly coveted prize, drawing the attention of foreign powers, especially the British Empire. Zanzibar was originally part of the Sultanate of Oman, a vast empire stretching across the Arabian Peninsula and into East Africa. For centuries, the island flourished under Omani rule. However, the political landscape of Zanzibar would change dramatically in the mid-19th century. In 1856, the Sultan of Oman's son, Majid bin Said, separated Zanzibar from Oman, making it a semi-independent sultanate under his rule. This move shocked many in the Arab world, but it also allowed Zanzibar to develop its own unique identity. The British, seeing an opportunity to extend their influence in East Africa, quickly turned their focus to the island, gradually increasing their presence through political maneuvering and economic control. By the late 19th century, Zanzibar had become a key strategic interest for the British Empire. The British sought to control the island's valuable resources and its position as a central hub for trade and commerce in the Indian Ocean. The British Empire was expanding its colonial reach in East Africa, and Zanzibar was seen as an essential piece of that puzzle. The island's location, just off the coast of mainland Africa, made it a vital point in controlling trade routes, and the resources available there, including spices and ivory, were highly prized. Tensions between the British and the ruling Sultan of Zanzibar, Khalid bin Bargash, began to escalate when the Sultan's actions were seen as defiant against British interests. After the death of Sultan Hamoud's cousin, Khalid bin Bargash seized power in Zanzibar without British approval. The British, not willing to tolerate such defiance, demanded Khalid step down and leave the palace, setting a deadline for his surrender. But Sultan Khalid was determined not to yield, and in doing so, he unknowingly set the stage for one of the quickest military confrontations in history. The stage was set for the Zanzibar War, a battle that would shape the future of the island and mark the culmination of British imperial ambitions in the region. The Zanzibar War was ignited by a series of tense and rapid events, beginning with the sudden death of Sultan Hamoud's cousin, the ruling Sultan of Zanzibar. Upon his death, a power struggle ensued, and Sultan Khalid bin Bargash, a relative of Hamoud, seized the throne without seeking British approval. This bold move by Khalid was a direct challenge to British interests, who had long held significant influence in Zanzibar. As a result, the British Empire immediately saw his rise to power as a threat to their control over the island and its strategic importance. In retaliation, the British issued a stark warning. Khalid must step down or face the consequences. On the morning of August 27, 1896, the British sent a clear ultimatum to Sultan Khalid: vacate the palace by 9 a.m., or the British would take military action. The deadline was set with the firm expectation that Khalid would comply, as the British had the full force of their naval power poised just off the coast. This demand was not simply a diplomatic gesture, it was a calculated threat, designed to demonstrate the immense power the British Empire wielded over the region. The pressure on Sultan Khalid mounted as the clock ticked down, but despite the overwhelming odds against him, Khalid refused to back down. He stood firm, unwilling to give up the throne without a fight. As the hour of confrontation drew closer, the British began preparing for an all-out conflict. The British Navy, with its formidable presence, was ready to enforce its demands. 2 cruisers and 3 gunboats surrounded Zanzibar's harbor, forming an unassailable blockade around the island. Inside the palace, Sultan Khalid had 2,800 loyal guards ready to defend his rule. The odds were starkly uneven. On one side, the Sultan's defenders, mostly local Zanzibari forces with limited military experience. On the other, the might of the British Empire, with its technologically advanced naval firepower and a contingent of 150 battle-hardened Marines. The stage was set for a confrontation that would soon escalate into full-blown warfare. Even as the British naval forces closed in, there were attempts at negotiation. Sultan Khalid received a final message from the British, urging him to surrender. The British Empire, clearly confident of their military superiority, offered him an opportunity to avoid bloodshed by peacefully relinquishing control. However, Khalid, perhaps believing in the legitimacy of his rule and unwilling to submit to foreign domination, refused to give up his throne. His decision set the course for a battle that would be over almost before it began. At precisely 9:02 a.m. on August 27, 1896, the British Navy launched their assault, opening fire on the Sultan's palace. The bombardment was swift and intense, with heavy shells striking key structures within the palace grounds. Within moments, the palace was ablaze, and the royal defenses were shattered. The bombardment continued relentlessly, tearing through the palace and destroying much of the surrounding infrastructure. Sultan Khalid, realizing that his forces were outmatched, attempted to escape the palace. He fled to the German East Africa territory, modern-day Tanzania, seeking refuge, but the damage was already done. In just 38 minutes, the war was over. Sultan Khalid's forces were devastated, with reports indicating that around 500 of his men were killed. Meanwhile, the British suffered only minimal casualties, with 1 soldier reported injured. The outcome was a decisive British victory, and within hours, Zanzibar was firmly under British control. Sultan Khalid's reign had ended, and the British Empire had secured yet another strategic territory in its vast colonial empire. The Zanzibar War, though brief, had far-reaching consequences for the region, solidifying British dominance over Zanzibar and leaving a lasting imprint on the history of East Africa. By 9:30 a.m. on August 27, 1896, the British forces had fully secured Zanzibar. The Sultan's flag was removed from the palace, symbolizing the end of Khalid's brief reign. The British wasted no time in consolidating their control over the island, choosing Sultan Hamud bin Mohammed as the new ruler. This decision was part of the British Empire's broader strategy to exert influence and maintain a puppet monarchy that would align with their colonial interests. Sultan Hamud, backed by the British, was a more cooperative figure who would help further British political and economic objectives in Zanzibar. Under his rule, the island would remain a strategic possession of the British Empire. In the years following the war, the British deepened their control over Zanzibar, and significant changes took place. One of the most important developments was the formal abolition of the slave trade in Zanzibar, a process that had already begun earlier in the century. In 1873, the British took decisive action to close the island's infamous slave market, which had been one of the last active slave trading centers in the world. This marked a turning point in Zanzibar's political and economic structure, transitioning from a slave-based economy to one more tightly integrated into the global trade networks controlled by European powers. The British-imposed changes fundamentally reshaped the social and economic landscape of Zanzibar, and though it paved the way for the island's modernization, it also highlighted the lasting effects of colonial rule. The Zanzibar War, though the shortest conflict in history, had lasting consequences on both the island and the wider region. It was a striking demonstration of British imperial power and the lengths to which the empire would go to maintain control over its colonies. While the war itself may have been brief, its impact was significant, shaping Zanzibar's political future and reinforcing British imperial dominance in East Africa. The abolition of the slave trade, while seen as a positive step in terms of human rights, was also part of a broader narrative of British influence over local economies and societies. The war and its aftermath left Zanzibar under British control until the mid-20th century, when the country would eventually gain independence. As we reflect on the Zanzibar War and the broader context of British colonization, it's important to question the lasting impact of imperialism on human civilization. The events of August 27, 1896, may seem like a distant episode in history, but they remind us of the complexities of colonial control and the legacies that continue to shape nations today. The consequences of British intervention in Zanzibar and in other colonies are still felt in various ways, from political structures to cultural changes. As we look at the world today, the question remains, how do the scars of colonization continue to influence modern societies? What do you think about the outcome of the Zanzibar War and its broader implications? Do you believe that British imperialism was justified in its actions, or do you think it left lasting harm on the societies it controlled? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, please like, comment, and share it with others who are interested in learning more about the fascinating history of imperialism and the world's shortest war. Don't forget to subscribe for more historical insights like this one.